Okay, so this is Frank. Frank is my 92 Volvo 740. I'll explain why it's Frank for a moment. It's a mashup between a 960 and a 740. The interior is all from a 960, and everything on the outside, engine and drivetrain, is a 740. Although I did, for you discerning Volvo nuts will notice, quick little swap out for 960 headlights. They actually fit if you do a little bit of work. Anyways, I've already done all the front suspension, every bushing top and bottom, all with rubber factory replacements, new struts. Working on the rears now, and since there's no videos about doing the rears, really, I'll do this sort of as a bits and pieces video log. So I'm going to do the shocks. I'm going to do the suspension bushings right down here for the trailing arms. And you can see there's a 3 bolts. The big one's an 18mm. I gotta get an 18mm socket. I'm stuck there. I dropped the drive shaft. It makes it easier to get at the bolts for the bushings for the torque arms. I've already taken out the track bar, which if you look in there you can see that's the gap where the track bar goes, and it attaches down the axle back there. The track bar is over here on the bench. So the thing about the track bar is there's a bushing for the right side and there's a bushing for the left side, and they're two different bushings. So originally I made a mistake and bought two of the same. I'm gonna have to go back and get the other one. It's only $4 or $5, not a big deal. Here's the first torque rod. This is the lower. I cleaned off 20 years of grime on it just so I could work with it, but you can see in the casting there, all that black is not specialized paint for looks. It's 20 years of grime. But I've got those bushings. I'll press them out. I'm not going to show you how to press out bushings. You know how to do that. I'm just going to take you under the car in a moment and give you a quick rundown. Grime. I'm pretty sure that the pinion seal here is leaking, but I'm not going to get to it now. That's the through bolt for the lower torque rod. There's your upper torque rod right there. That cable's for the parking brake. It hasn't worked in years, doesn't matter. And up front here is the front connection point for the lower torque rod. And upside down and backwards, there's the other torque rod there. So those are going to be pretty straightforward and easy to take out. The real bear, and I'm going to give it a go, are the two bushings there that are at the top of the subframe. It looks easy, but I doubt that it is, just simply because there's going to be so much work to get those in. I believe that the two ends of the the subframe, just insert into the rubber bushings, and the rubber bushings push into that carrier, and it bolts back in place. So we'll see what happens. Let me swing you around here, though. This is the, oops, there we go, upside down and backwards. This is the front of the subframe. There's two bolts that hold that pin in there, and that pin is into a bushing which is pressed into the frame. Not going after that. I have no idea. Not even going to try it. Shop. So, old bushing, new bushing. Old bushing, new bushing. New bushing has a slightly different profile to it. Here's the other one. Put them down side by side. One's in plastic, one's not. You can see that this dimension is the same. Measured it out. Measured it out. I'm not entirely sure, but this is also the same diameter as this. It's just that these are in different places. However, when I put it together, everything seems to be okay. So we'll see how it goes back together when it's in the car. Quick tip for those of you guys who are going to do this on your own. Had a bear of a time trying to fit that into here, because this is also flared on the inside. So what I did was I put a big band clamp around this, sort of like a spring compressor, squeezed this in just enough so that I could get it into the ridge here, and then just pressed it right in. The band clamp came off, and it went right in all the way, and I just had to work it a couple times to get it to even up on both sides. So a little bit more showing on this side than that side, but I don't think it's going to make any difference once it gets in the car. We are back at work at Frank. So I got the lower torque rod reinstalled. You can see right there. It's cleaned up. I had to put the jack under the differential and raise the axle up to help align it a little bit more, and then just apply some grunt to it. Cut the bolt and then kind of drove it through with a hammer and a long extension to get to it. I'll be going after the top one soon. I'm going to give it a go, and I'm definitely going to pass on those guys. Hell no, not at this point. I just have no idea what I'll be getting myself into. However, I will be tackling those bushings. I'm pretty confident I can figure it out on my own. And I'll take you around and show you the track bar in just a second. So, track bar, Panhard bar, whatever you want to call it, is back in. It was easier to install the driver's side first, raise up the axle, and then with a little bit of rubber mallet persuasion get that side to go back in. But pretty good. I'll have to look up all the torque specs. I have no idea what they are, but I'll tighten them up and go. There you can see it's pretty easy access to the top torque rod at the back. Not too worried about that, and you can actually almost get a straight shot through. You really can't see it very well. There we go, straight shot through over the rear brake rotor. The front one, interestingly enough, you really can't see it back there, but the top bolt for the top one is right there, which also looks like it's going to be pretty easy to get at it right through the suspension member right here, and we'll see what goes on, and I'll get back to you sometime soon. Torque rod, it's shorter than the bottom one if you didn't know. A lot of grime on it. Surprisingly, these bushings look like they're in really great shape. Not a lot of play in them. I almost put it just back in the car, but I'm committing to it anyway, so I'm going to go and take it over to the shop and press those suckers out. Just a reminder that to put this one in, I'm going to squeeze this part with a band clamp, sort of like a spring compressor, so that it slides into the receiver here, and then press in the rest of the way. And then this one has got a funny profile, but it's the right bushing. It's got all the right diameters, so I'll let it go. The other one works out fine. Got it in there. All right, see you on the other side. Here we are. This is the old bushing, which is in really good shape, all things considered, but I'm already into the job, so I might as well. There's the new bushing. You can see there's a little bit of stretch, a little bit of difference because it's been in there for a long time. Here's the inside of that receiver. If you notice, it's kind of conical on the inside and the outside. I just cleaned it up a little bit to get some of the shit out of there. And in just a second, I'm going to put a band clamp around this to show you how I did that. Press it in, but again, you don't need to see how that's done, and I'll be back in a couple minutes. Around it, just enough to squeeze it a little bit. Some grease here. Flip that guy right over right there. It's going to slide in nice, super slick and easy, and then we can move on to the hard side. It's halfway in, so now my band clamp is loose. I'm just going to take it off and press it the rest of the way in. Boom, slicker than snot on a doorknob. That went back in so easily. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. Still not going after those, against it. There's a couple reasons, but I don't want to take the risk of changing all the driveline geometry that I've got set up right now. It's on a jack. I'm going to move the jack stands. I decided to do these guys here. I'm just going to take the entire swing arm off. 1, 2, 3. There you go. 4. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's bolts on the shackle, and it'll just drop right off. The spring isn't attached. And then I can take it over to the shop and use the tools that I have over there to work that bushing out. So, getting better and easier every minute. Got it out. Wasn't that hard. Figured just the way it worked. I gotta take a minute and raise up my jack stands to support the axle while I go out to the shop to work. But I'm only gonna do one side at a time. That way, if I really screw up, I won't only screw up one side at a time. Set this up. I braced it over here on the workbench on a 4x4 so I could keep the face flat. It popped right out easy, and there it is. That's the old one. You can see it's a little bit worn. There's some definite breakage in the rubber. It says up on the original one, so you know which side is up. Replacement one, of course, doesn't say up on it, but I know where it's going to go this time. So there's this little ridge in it right here, and that ridge, and you can see that groove, that ridge sets in that groove right there. So I don't imagine it's going to be hard to put in, but of course, time will tell. I'll come back with an update. And emery papered this up a little bit to clean things up. This guy goes here like this. My problem now, and I'm realizing, is I don't have a socket large enough to push on the plastic. So I'm gonna go to Home Depot, I guess, find myself a piece of pipe. Hopefully they've got something that's the right size, and use that and create my own press tool, I suppose. So this is going to slow me down a little bit, but not going anywhere today. And even easier than I anticipated, I did, just for the sake of it, put a band clamp. I'm using the old one here just to show you. I put a band clamp around the new one. There we go. Right about where that ridge is, just to squeeze it a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so I did put a band clamp around this, right around where the ridge is, just to squeeze it a little bit. And man, it went right in and didn't take much effort at all. So good. And by the way, this is my new Volvo special tool. $12 from my Ace Hardware. It's a, as you can see, it's a cast iron 1.5 inch coupling. Put a cap in the top of it. Boom. We're done. Nothing's been torqued yet. That just took some grease. You really can't see that now, but some grease and a couple whacks with a mallet to get it in place. I held that end up with my knee, swung it just a little bit inboard so that it was out of the way of the shackle, and once I got it onto that pivot bolt, I just swung it back up in place. Then I used my jack to lift up on the swing arm so I could align the bolts for the shackle, which are right over here. Those guys went right back in nice and easy. Just put the shock absorber in. Nothing's tightened and torqued. Just a little tip, I don't know if anybody ever told you this, but the band that they put on the shock absorber, you should just leave it on until the shock absorber is in place, because otherwise it'll extend all the way out and then you got to fight with it to get it in. So now I'm just going to clip this, pull the strap out and through, and the shock absorber is in place without any stress or strain on you. It makes it so much easier. Until I got to this point, and I just couldn't pull the bushing off the last ½ inch of bolt or so, so I grabbed a spaded bait, a cheap one for my drill kit, and just kept drilling holes until it loosened up enough to come off. You may have to do the same thing.